Good morning. You are listening to Florida Commercial Real Estate Radio. I am your host, Doug Dennison, and we are broadcasting from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city at WFOY 1240 AM studios. I will have a co-host today, Jerry Anderson, CCIM from Sperry Van Ness, Commercial Real Estate Advisors. In Palm Beach County, we'll be calling in today through the power of the Internet. This program is going to be streamed worldwide on 1240news.com. The show will also be archived on svn.com. Sperry Van Ness Commercial Real Estate Advisors are the sponsors of this program. Additionally, this show will be posted on youtube.com. We're going to be talking about commercial real estate, different commercial real estate markets across the state of Florida. We've got a lot of topics. And Jerry, are you with us today?
Good morning, Doug. I am with you from sunny South Florida this morning.
Sunny South Florida. Well, wonderful. Before we even get to the show, I want to talk about last week's show. And we had a great guest that was an expert in the medical office facilities, and we got a call from one of the listeners, and they hooked up with the real estate broker, and he's looking to move his medical practice. I just thought that was a wonderful thing, Jerry.
Well, it's part of what prompted the topics that we're going to talk about today. Yes, it was exciting to have a listener call in and ask for specific help, and I was so thrilled that that particular prospect, that particular person understands how important it is to make sure you hire the right person to help you. But it doesn't surprise me. We were talking about medical office buildings last week, and boy, if doctors don't understand the value of specialties, who would?
Exactly. Exactly. I think we made the analogy that, if you're somebody that needs medical services, you're going to go out and look for the best specialist in that field. And what a great segue for the Sperry Van Ness person who is the expert in medical facilities and real estate. And we hooked him up, and that was a beautiful thing.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. I think today's show is pretty exciting because we're going to talk about that topic, and then I'm excited about the second half of the show. I'm going to sort of be your interviewee this first half because I have a lot of things in my mind about what traits that people should look for in a professional commercial real estate advisor. But the second part of the show, then I'm really excited to hear Lewis Fisher, and I'm going to turn the tables on you a little, Doug, and I'm going to interview you the second part of the show because of the trip you just took up to Washington, D.C. to talk with the GSA and about the surplus property. So good show today. Thanks for being the host, sir.
Well, absolutely, and thanks for being the co-host. But tell us a little bit about yourself for the listeners that may be listening in for the first time.
Certainly. My name is Jerry Anderson. I'm with Sperry Van Ness Commercial Real Estate Advisors. I do have the master license for the state of Florida. So the 20 offices or so that we have around the state of Florida are part of my umbrella, under my umbrella, if you will. And my responsibility is to help clients make sure they get the right commercial real estate advice by hiring the right commercial real estate advisor. We're real estate brokers, work on a contingent fee basis like everybody else. If you don't know about Sperry Van Ness Commercial Real Estate, one of the top 10 commercial real estate companies in the world, about 1,000 advisors throughout the country in 150 locations. So quite the footprint, and very strong here in Florida as well.
Well, very, very strong. And because you're basically in charge of all the offices in Florida for Sperry Van Ness, and I'm going to quickly go over them because they're all over the state, starting from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, Jupiter, Melbourne, New Smyrna Beach, Winter Park, Orlando, Lake Mary, Ocala, St. Augustine, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Destin, Fort Walton Beach, Panama City, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, Fort Myers, and Naples. You're all over the map. And I guess the question is, when you're out there, and just like the caller who called in and said, I need some professional help, I'm going to be changing my office and I'm looking for a real estate agent, what do people think, and what should they do when they're considering a top commercial real estate agent?
Well, that's a great question. It's a little bit like any other profession. Commercial real estate is very interesting. It's a business that you can get into with as little training as simply getting a license from the state of Florida. You know what's interesting, Doug, is you would think that someone would answer that first question. They say, okay, well, what are the qualifications of this person?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then in real estate, of course, you do know this because of your background as well. You got a real estate license in the state of Florida. You're licensed to sell houses, and you're licensed to sell $50 million office buildings.
Yes.
Can you imagine that?
Yes, that's true.
What kind of business gives you that little training and yet enables you legally, licensure-wise, to sell? So, yes, you have to have a real estate license, but just like when you choose your doctor, you need to be really careful that that person is qualified to do for you what you need to have done. So your question was, what should people look for in a commercial real estate professional? And I have a laundry list, but I'm going to get on my soapbox. Would it be okay if I get on my soapbox this morning?
Please do. Please do.
Well, I might hurt some feelings, though. I could hurt some feelings of some of those commercial real estate agents who may not agree that they need all these traits to be successful.
Hey, people are looking for the best, Jerry. And so how do you determine if you're a person who needs the best? How do you determine that they are the best?
All right, I'm gonna start out. I'm gonna answer that question. So you need to interrupt me, you interrupt, because sometimes I get on this tangent, and I'm pretty passionate about it, Doug.
No problem.
And I'm going to say one thing right off the bat that's going to surprise a lot of our listeners. You can tell immediately whether or not you have somebody that is going to be easy to work with. Now, I'm not talking about their commercial real estate experience in this comment, but what I'm going to say is, do they do what they say they're going to do? And let me tell you what I mean by that. If they don't do the little things, I'll call you Tuesday morning. I'll send you that information this evening. If they don't do the little things that they told you, they sure as heck are not going to do the big things. An indicator of whether or not you're going to be able to have confidence in the person that you choose to handle your commercial real estate is right off the bat. Do they do the little things that they say they're going to do? You're going to think this is a minor item, Doug. But are they on time? I'm not a military man. I was not in the military. I was very, fortunate during the Vietnam War. My number did not come up. I had a lot of my friends that were there, a lot of tragedy to go along with it. I was not. I didn't enlist in the military. But I do know this. Had I been in the military, I would have been on time. And my mentor said to me one day, if you're on time, Jerry, you are late. So a very early indication of somebody you're going to choose to handle your commercial real estate. And make no mistake about it, folks, commercial real estate is a very important and expensive decision-making process in your life. So you just flippantly can't establish a relationship with somebody you can't trust. So do they do what they say they're going to do is the one, an early indicator. Now, let's talk about the qualifications of a commercial real estate practitioner, because commercial real estate is very complicated. Now, I don't care whether you're looking to lease a building, to buy a building, to get out of the space that you are in. Maybe you're looking for an investment to provide income for you later on in life. It's complicated. I think of commercial real estate as a silo. It's a tall silo. Let's assume from it you get a silo of grain, and it's 50 feet high, and it's 15 feet across. If you were to elevate yourself and you were to look down the silo, that round silo, you could slice and dice commercial real estate in there. Because when you're looking down at the silo, you have retail properties, office properties, industrial properties. You have triple net lease properties. You have unique properties, self-storage units, churches. I think of all the schools. I mean, there's so many different types of commercial real estate. Just think about it next time you drive down the street. Well, when you look down at the top of the silo, it's like a pie. You've got all those slices. But now go to the ground level. When you go to the ground level and you look up 50 feet, you've got a tall silo. Well, do you really want the same person handling your 1,000 square foot lease that is handling a $50 million office building and has never even ever looked at a lease contract?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our friend Matt Mercer, who is an attorney who's on the show, you know, he's on the air just prior to us coming on today. You know, he would talk about the contractual agreement that your attorney needs to look at, and he's going to say, you know, you better have a practitioner, a business person that understands that. So, when you look at that silo and you realize how complicated, how deep, how wide, and how segmented the commercial real estate industry is, you really need to pick someone that specializes in the need that you have. If you need to open a medical office building, don't hire somebody that only works in the shopping center area.
Right.
On the other hand, if you have an idea you're going to open a donut shop and compete with Dunkin' Donuts, you sure as heck better hire a commercial professional that understands traffic patterns, demographics, and what makes a successful retail operation. So that specialization helps an awful lot.
And how do they get that specialization? Do they, I mean, obviously, once you get your first job, you know, you grow from that, you learn from that, but how do you get more training in that specific field?
Well, there are designations in the industry. There's a number of designations. The National Association of Realtors is a very good place to start. Mm-hmm. Go to the National Association of Realtors website.
Okay.
And look at the different designations that they have. For example, there are designations for land, people that specialize in commercial land or even agricultural land.
Okay.
There are designations for what's called the CCIM, stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member. Those designations have requirements. There's another one for Society of Industrial and Office Real Estate. There's the Counselors of Real Estate. And all those designations within the industry, pretty much all given by the National Association of Realtors, carry with it not only track record, not only experience, but also education. So when you're dealing with a CCIM or an SILR or an ALC or a CRE, I know it sounds like alphabet soup there, but you can be assured that that person has training in their specialty, has a track record that they had to submit and approved by a board of directors to be awarded that designation. And that is certainly one place to start. Now, that's not to say that somebody that's working on that designation couldn't be of help to you, but I'm just saying that people with those designations obviously have proven experience that can be of help to you.
So if I'm somebody that is looking, let's go for the fact that I'm just looking for a property, and since I live in St. Augustine, we'll pick on St. Augustine, and I'm looking for an office building, 5,000 square feet, something like that, 5 to 10,000 square feet. And I'm new to the area. You know, of course, I can go on the internet and kind of look, and I can look at the newspaper. But how do you kind of interview somebody to say, hey, this is the person, and what does the real estate agent, give to me that makes me feel warm and fuzzy?
Well, I think when you're out interviewing, you should interview commercial real estate agents the same way you would interview somebody for a job.
Okay.
You're going to talk about what's important to you. And I have a phrase, here's my little sound bite. You should look for somebody that you like, somebody that you can trust, and somebody that you believe can either make you or save you money. Now, I always reverse that because I tell our brokers, look, people work with you for three reasons. They work with you because you're likable. They work with you because they trust you. Hey, you do what you say you're going to do. And three, they work with you because you either make them or save them money. So in your interview process, go to the other side of the table now as a client, think about, do I trust this person? Do they have a track record? Are they likable? Do I think they can make me or save me money? And those are the questions that you have to weave into your interview process. And you want people that are assertive, not aggressive. There are some in the commercial real estate industry that are just so doggone aggressive, they're obnoxious. That is not the person you want. You want someone that's assertive. You want someone that's team-oriented, because I can guarantee you, in this complex commercial real estate arena, if you're out there trying to lease 5,000 square feet, there's not a lone ranger that's going to be able to help you. You need somebody that has a team. You need somebody that has a team around them, possibly access to people that can help you with, in your example, Doug, space planning, possibly architecture, possibly layout. Certainly needs to have an attorney that's going to be part of that team if you as a client don't have an attorney. Mm-hmm. So those all come into play when you choose your commercial real estate practitioner.
Well, that's really good information. Now, I will just take personal preference because I've known a lot of commercial real estate brokers, and I'd like to go back to that medical analogy again. And the people that you want to hire as your doctor or get as your doctor sometimes are just so busy and they are so honed in that they don't have all of that extra time to do things, and they are just the top of their field, and may not be the life of the party, I guess what I'm saying. But they know so much and they know everybody that there's no question that's the person you want. He may not have the bedside manner, but I want that person because he's done 4,000 operations. How does that fit in with the top person who is running and does have a team? How does that kind of fit in when you're somebody that's looking for a real estate broker and really need to know about his experience or her experience?
Well, yeah, I think the essence of your question is, okay, Jerry, you said you have to be likable, but
right.
I don't necessarily need to like my doctor for them to be a great surgeon.
Right.
Is that the essence of your question?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Well, I can appreciate that. I do tend to like to work with people that I like and people that are fun to work with. But I hear you loud and clear. And what you're saying is, look, maybe I want the expertise of that person, and maybe they have a team. Many of our advisors around the country, I know you talked about, you mentioned in the laundry list of offices, Tampa and Fort Lauderdale, and
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned Jupiter. All three of those markets, I can point to teams, and I will guarantee you the personality of the team members are not all the same.
Right.
You've got some that are the life of the party.
Yep.
And then you have other members of the team. They may seem boring to you, but let me tell you what. They go to work for you. They will get you market data to make sure you don't make a decision that later on you will regret in terms of what you do in terms of commercial real estate. So I do think that the team members have help in that regard.
Okay.
And, the other thing, Doug, is you're going to tend to, as a client looking for someone to help you, regardless of your need, let's say you want to buy an investment property,
mm-hmm.
you're going to tend to look for people that are visible. Hey, look, part of the reason on the radio show that we invite some of our advisors from around the state is that visibility. We had Ashley Bloom from Sarasota, Miguel Diarcos from Orlando. In their discussion, just like Mark Alexander talked about, Matt Rodolante and Tom Morgan, all of them.
Yep.
These are people who are visible. They take the extra time in their market to give of themselves.
Okay.
That visibility helps.
Well, again, if I'm looking for a real estate broker and I know about Sperry Van Ness, and I've heard about Sperry Van Ness, and somebody has said good things about that, which goes into word of mouth, which of course is critical. How do they find a Sperry Van Ness advisor? Where do they go on the website?
Well, today the internet is so strong for us. A website for our Florida advisors, it's very easy, SVN Florida. S as in Sierra, V as in Victor, N as in November, Florida.com. And on that website, you'll see all of our offices, you'll see all of our advisors, you'll see their bios, you'll see the listings, in other words, their inventory that they carry, what they specialize in. And the same holds true for nationwide, svn.com, which is our national website, svn.com, will help you anywhere else. But in Florida, it's svnflorida.com.
Okay. And we've got about a minute and a half before we take a break, but we talked to other Sperry Van Ness advisors, and they all say that past work has been so important for them because word of mouth, all of a sudden they are being referred to by somebody that they've already helped, and it's such an easier transition. How has that happened, and the trust must be so good to have somebody refer one to another person?
Well, you do. You know, you think about handing off a client that you have worked hard to get a relationship with, but my phrase in that, my soundbite, Doug, is that work hard as a professional. And now I'm talking to our brokers, I'm talking to the advisors. Work hard to do more business with fewer people. In other words, do such a great job with your clients that they want to hire you over and over and over again.
That's very good. That's excellent. I like that a lot because I have always believed that if you do a good job for one person, it will end up being 5, 10 more deals, and having somebody tell somebody else that you are the best is infinitely better than you telling somebody that you are the best. So, really good thoughts. Again, how do people get a hold of you, Jerry?
Easiest way for me is email jerry.anderson@svn.com. jerry.anderson@svn.com.
Very good. You are going to stay through the break. We're going to have a couple of ads, and then we're going to have a new speaker on that we can talk to. And again, I thank you for being the co-host. We're going to go for a short break. This is the Florida Commercial Real Estate Radio Show. I'm your host, Doug Dennison. Let's go for a quick break. All right, we are back. This is the Florida Commercial Real Estate Radio Show, broadcast every Friday live from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. I am your host, Doug Dennison, and we have our co-host, Jerry Anderson. Jerry, are you still with us?
Oh, yes, sir, I am, Doug. Yes, sir, I am.
Wonderful, wonderful. It was very interesting talking to you on what your thoughts were on what people should look for with a commercial real estate agent, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. You had some great thoughts. I guess we now switch to, the world of the government in regards to real estate. And I have had the pleasure of making that my career for many, many years. I think in total I've sold about 12,000 government surplus properties, and that is from FDIC, RTC, GSA, United States Marshal Service, Small Business Administration. I'm sure I'm missing a couple. Actually, this will date me, but actually FISLIC, which was the insurance corporation for the savings and loans. But I believe that the sale of government surplus properties is extremely important. And let's continue with that topic, but we have a new caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Doug. Louis Fisher.
Louis Fisher. Jerry Anderson is on the line with us. Jerry, welcome your guest.
Good morning, Louis. Thank you for dialing in this morning. Yes, the reason we wanted to have you both talk about your recent trip, and Louis, I'm going to ask Doug a couple of questions to get us started, because both of you fellows have been involved in this government surplus property arena for quite a while. But Doug, I'm going to ask you first. As I said at the start of the show, we're switching roles here a little bit. I want to ask you to share with our listeners, how did this topic become so top of mind, and help me understand Louis's involvement? Because, folks, what we're talking about here is Louis and Doug just got back from a trip to Washington, D.C., and they took that trip to talk to our legislators, our congressmen, our GSA about the surplus properties in the United States, which, Doug, my understanding is it currently is over 14,000 properties, and I want to know how you got on your high horse about this, and what inspired you, and what triggered your mission to help the government get these off the books.
Well, to backtrack a little bit, yes, Louis Fisher and I worked for Louis for 12, 15 years, and has always been a mentor to me in this government surplus property area. But to go back probably 2 years ago, 2011, President Obama spoke at the State of the Union address and mentioned the fact that we need to sell government surplus properties that are costing the American taxpayer a lot of money in holding cost. Now, when I say government surplus properties, I am not talking residential. I'm not talking about Fannie Mae. I'm not talking about Freddie Mac. I'm talking about properties that the government has. They are they own more property than anybody in the world, and this topic was right down my alley, so I kept abreast of it. And this is, again, probably February 2011. And then President Obama did his State of the Budget address in Baltimore later that month, February 2011, and indicated there were 14,000 government surplus properties that needed to be sold to help the budget, to get the cost off of the shoulders of the American taxpayer. And that was when I really got excited about it, and have probably made, I guess, 7 or 8, 9 trips in the last 2 years up to Washington, D.C., pretending that I have any idea on how to make things happen. But just as an American taxpayer, I'm upset about the fact that there is a property in Washington, D.C. that for 10 years has been abandoned. It's a post office annex right in a great section of Washington, D.C., and every year it costs the American taxpayer $6 million a year for that property alone to sit abandoned. And that's $60 million that, no one knows about. And there's 14,000 properties of this, and they're from a small portion, a sliver of land, to a property like that, or a courthouse, abandoned courthouse. And and I'm getting on my high horse, of course. So it's time for Louis to come in. I was going up. I just had there was an article in DS News, which comes from the 5-Star Conference, and it's all about properties and probably one of the best organizations in the real estate field. And they did an article, and I was quoted several times about these 14,000 government surplus properties. And they just had a conference up there, and I was lucky enough to get the 5-Star people with Congressman Billy Long, who is a former auctioneer who has a passion about these 14,000 government surplus properties. And so I was going up there to introduce him to the 5-Star people before he spoke to a speech at a conference about the 14,000 government surplus properties. So I called Louis and I said, Louis, you want to come up with me? Because I think this is important stuff. And Louis, it's all yours, buddy.
And Louis, you've operated in this government arena in pretty much most of your career, I understand. So share with our listeners why you got excited about trying to save I've seen estimates, gentlemen, of anywhere between $1.6 billion and $2 billion that it costs us as taxpayers every single year to hold these properties. So, Louis, jump in, if you will. Why did you get excited and agree to go along?
Well, Jerry, first I was very humbled and honored to be invited there by Doug and the DS News Conference and have an opportunity to roam the halls with Doug, both in the Senate and also in the House. And I will tell you this to your listeners and your audience. Doug is a friend of Capitol Hill up there. I was amazed at how many people knew him on a first-name basis and the inroads that he really has made relative to getting the attention of our legislators to focus on this and even to put it in draft form as far as legislative House bills, etc. And so I got excited because of the fact that literally since 1984, when I first began in this business in 1979. In 1984, I made a focused decision to really look at the government space relative to the various agencies and having an opportunity to serve those agencies in providing our auction services and selling real estate for the Small Business Administration, whether it be the United States Bankruptcy Court and many, many districts across this United States. We've also worked with the FSLIC, which was the former Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. Doug and I worked an enormous amount with the FDIC and the RTC, the U.S. Marshal Service. We can go on and on about all the acronyms, but what's been very rewarding for me in my 32-year career, and Doug's been a major part of that, is the successes that we've been able to accomplish in selling real estate at fair market value for the government and turning it back to the private sector, which is a win-win for everyone. It's not only a win-win for the government, but it's also a win-win for us as taxpayers. It's also a win-win for those that acquire the assets and improve them, and it provides a tax base, and it gets property that is laying dormant, or as Doug said, abandoned, back to better use. So I'll tell you what, there's a misconception that everything kind of moves along at a snail's pace in Washington, and we may think that relative to bills being passed, but it's a very rapid pace up there for day-to-day activities. It's one meeting to the next. It's one hearing to the next. It's one phone call. It's hardly a minute to breathe, and I tell you, we got back late Wednesday night, and I think I took all day yesterday just to catch my breath.
Well, we were also, besides going to Capitol Hill, besides meeting with 4 or 5 legislative offices, we went to the 5-Star Conference. It's called the Government Forum. Congressman Billy Long from Missouri did a speech. He mentioned Louis in his speech, that he was one of the best auctioneers. And, of course, I probably haven't recognized you. Louis, you are with Sperry Van Ness, and what do you do for Sperry Van Ness?
Yes, Doug. I've been with Sperry Van Ness since 2001, and I'm what they call the council chair for real estate auctions nationwide for the advisors across the country. And as the champion of that, what we call the vertical within Sperry Van Ness, I basically educate and also work closely with the advisors in promoting this as an alternative platform to offer their sellers, sort of as another arrow in their quiver, so to speak, and when they're pitching prospects on what they can provide services, not only commercial, conventional real estate transactions, but also what we call accelerated marketing, which is auctions and sealed bids. So I've had some very, very rewarding times with those advisors, most recent being in the eastern shore of Maryland, where the advisor in that local marketplace and our team, the auction team, teamed up together to take a retail center that was in Chapter 11 bankruptcy to auction, and we were able to generate $5,925,000 for that property against a $4,600,000 appraisal. So the SVN culture is to cooperate and collaborate, and that's not only externally, but it's also internally. So I'm the council chair in direct answer to your question for Sperry Van Ness relative to auctions.
Well, Lewis,
And Doug, before our call's over today, I'm going to ask Lewis to bring us up to date on an industry event that both of us are involved in, but he's very involved in it, and we'll talk about that here momentarily. But I want to go back to your time in Washington, D.C., because I am sitting here as a taxpayer, and I'm fuming, quite honest with you. I am fuming about this $1.6 billion, maybe even $2 billion a year holding cost that is on my back. I mean, all I hear about are cuts. I'm a pilot, so I've been I've been affected by these cuts that took place and closed down are closing down 143 control towers around the United States. So all of the cuts that are taking place, and yet here we are not doing anything with these holding costs. You guys just got back. I heard you loud and clear, Lewis. A lot of activity going on behind the curtain. But do you see this coming to resolution? And if so, what's it going to take to get it started, and what's the timeline?
Well, I came away with a sense of meeting with various staff and congressmen and senators that we met with, Doug and I both, there during our 3 days. That number one, there seems to be a spirit of cooperativeness over the last 110 days on both sides of the aisles. I think that Congress has finally realized that the American taxpayer in general is really not very pleased with what's happening there on Capitol Hill. And there seems, as we all know, to be just a standstill. But over really the last 110 days, and we heard this from multiple parties, there seems to be a spirit to move forward and a cooperativeness, at least in discussion phase. Let's put it that way. We won't know until it actually hits the bills that are being formulated. We spoke with 5 different offices up there, and 3 of which are actively putting together in bills to be put on the floor for voting various language relative to disposition of these properties. And one bill we hope will actually, it's already been moved through committee, and so it will be hopefully introduced in August in the House. And I think us as American taxpayers, we have to be aware of this issue, and quite frankly, we have to reach out to our legislative body and representatives and let them know that we are behind this. And there's just a real benefit that I think comes as a result of this. I think real estate brokers can become involved in selling these properties. Real estate auctioneers that specialize in commercial real estate can have an opportunity. Title companies can be involved. Environmental companies can be involved. Surveyors can be involved to the benefit of selling these properties back into the private sector's hands to be improved and, here again, create a tax base which will generate additional revenues once the asset is sold.
Well, that's the other thing. Municipalities, Doug, and you help me out on this, make sure I'm on the right track. The government's not paying real estate taxes to the local municipality on these properties.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Let me talk about the fact that what a abandoned property does, and you guys chime in whenever, and then we'll get back to the players that are involved, the congressmen that are making a difference in this, and hopefully will become the superstars that carry the ball over the line. But when an abandoned property sits, it devalues in worth and value. It devalues the area's business. It devalues the area's values. It increases crime. It increases vagrancy. And in the terms of the government surplus properties, they are not they're not paying taxes. Okay, so I was down in Miami. There's a federal courthouse right down in the center, right next to Flagler Street, that has been abandoned for 5 years. We went down there last year, and there was a congressional hearing led by Congressman Micah from Florida and Congressman Jeff Denham from California. These two have been the ones in the past Congress that have really pounded on the table and said, we need to sell these things. So they did a congressional hearing down in Miami courthouse, and for 5 or 6 years this has been abandoned. It costs the American taxpayer $1.2 million a year, and yet you could smell the mildew. That's what happens when a property is abandoned. Now, if we can get somebody in to buy that Miami courthouse and turn it into retail, turn it into a shopping center, a hotel, all of a sudden, what does that do? All right, the new buyer, private sector, comes in. They are going to fix up the building, which is buying goods and services. They are going to hire employees. That is good. Job growth is good. They are going to start paying taxes to the local municipalities who need help. The value of the property is going to go up. The value of the property around the area is going to go up, and the business around the area is going up. That will help the local restaurant, the local dry cleaner, the local gas station. All of these things are good things. This is a no-brainer that every American taxpayer should be calling their elected official and say, we need to get this done. These properties need to be sold. We can't pay for holding costs like this. And guess what? Doesn't the budget need some help? So why not sell these properties? So, Lewis, take it over from there.
Well, I think if you look at a prime example, back in 2006, the city of Miami, the Sports and Exhibition Authority, which is a sub-arm agency within the city of Miami, as we all know, the Miami Arena was for the first home of the professional NBA team, the Miami Heat, as well as the hockey team. And so when both of those franchises built their own stadiums and moved, that city of Miami Beach was standing there saying, what do we do with an empty arena? And that cost the city of Miami taxpayers about $1 million a year. And so there was an RFP that was solicited, and my firm was selected and engaged to sell the Miami Arena. And we had 2 appraisals that were done, MAI appraisals on that, because it literally had sat vacant for about 2.5 to 3 years. And so you can imagine the cost with just the electricity and security and so forth. It was $1 million a year. The 2 appraisals came in at an average of $22,650,000, and we took it to auction, and we ended up selling it at auction right on the floor of the basketball court there with a lot of press for $28,133,000. So we alleviated the $1 million that the taxpayer in the city of Miami was having to fund, and we ended up selling it back to the private sector, and at a price well over $6 million of what professional appraisers said that it was worth. So it was a win-win situation, and I think that is what we're talking about, is that we at least have experience in this. So we know it works, we know it benefits, and we know that it generates revenues beyond just the acquisition price alone.
The players that are very involved in this, I mentioned two already. Congressman John Mica from Florida. The other one, Congressman Jeff Denham from California, had a bill, H.R. 1734, got passed in the House last year and never got to the Senate. Congressman Chavez from Utah has a new bill that, again, property disposal. And on the Senate side is Senator Carper, who holds the power and has a bill that he is pushing. So all of these players need to get together and say, okay, let's wheedle and deedle, but we need to get something done for the American taxpayer because it's just too important. And while we're up there, Lewis, you're doing an auction right now, an industry with Jerry through Auction Point, that maybe this is the kind of thing that will really help in this the possibility of selling these government agency properties.
Yes, Doug. When we met with the head person of real estate within the General Services Administration there in Washington, and GSA, as many of your audience probably do know, but maybe some do not know, the GSA is actually the liquidating arm for the federal government relative to any what you would call underutilized or surplus property. Now, that can be a lathe of equipment all the way to real estate. And so when we were talking with the GSA, I had with me the promotional material for the Auction Point 2013 event that Jerry and I are a major part of in organizing, promoting, and conducting. And it's an industry-wide event where we are coming together. It's for real estate brokers in the commercial real estate business, and it's being hosted and sponsored and promoted by brokers. So it's the first of its kind ever in the history where all brokers in commercial real estate can bring in one format, one marketplace, their clients' properties and put it on an online, robust platform and have them widely exposed literally throughout the world for buyers to come and to get familiar with the assets and get qualified to bid. And we have on that platform, auctionpoint.com, well over $400 million of real estate from every asset class, whether it be retail, office, industrial, multifamily, golf courses, and we also have assets in select global markets such as London, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and other areas across the world. So we have, I think, over 100 different real estate brokers from all brands, whether it be Cushman & Wakefield, Grubb & Ellis, Marcus & Millichap, Lee & Associates, NAI, Sperry Van Ness. These brokers are all working collectively to come together to put on what is called the Commercial Real Estate Online Auction Event of the Year, which will take place May the 29th to the 31st of this year.
Lewis, you want to go to what website to get that information?
That is simply www.auctionpoint, that's with no E at the end, P-O-I-N-T, auctionpoint.com.
And you're of a mind that this type of a event could help out the government in their need for selling government surplus properties. I think it's a great idea. How do people get a hold of you, Lewis?
Probably the best way is by email. My email address is Fisher, F-I-S-H-E-R, the letter L, at S as in Sperry, V as in Van, and N as in Ness.com. Fisher L at svn.com.
Great interview. Jerry, give us your information one more time, and you've been a great co-host once again.
Well, I appreciate the input and appreciate both of you as taxpayers going up there and to Washington making something happen. Jerry.Anderson at svn.com.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you being on the show. Again, this is the Florida Commercial Real Estate Radio Show. It is sponsored by Sperry Van Ness, Florida. And we've had today two great guests. We've had Jerry Anderson as the co-host. He is a CCIM from Palm Beach County, Florida. And we've also had Louis Fisher, who is in charge of the Sperry Van Ness auction realm. And he's from St. Augustine, Florida. Again, just back from Washington, D.C., trying to make some noise, trying to give the politicians and the agencies some kind of advice to help them and to help the American taxpayer. And again, thank you both, gentlemen, and we'll be back next week for the Florida Commercial Real Estate Radio Show, broadcast every Friday from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. Thank you, gentlemen, and take care. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.